Today on the podcast, I'm going to tell you why range of motion in your training is overrated, why slowing down is absolutely essential to you achieving your goals, and why all men need community. I just turned 43, so to celebrate this week, I am going to give you 3 things I've realised that I got wrong, one for every year of my 40s so far. We are now well into autumn. I have been noticing the seasonal shift in my own energy and focus and motivation, not least because this is really a busier time of year for me and my family than the summer. It's birthday season for us, so we've had a lot of trips. I've had some time off, really enjoyed it. But what that has meant is that work has been a little bit more fragmented than I would like. And I think that's impacted on some of the work that I love doing, like the podcast. I feel like I've lost a little bit of momentum with the podcast lately. I've been trying to get some guests lined up, still intending on doing that. Got some cool discussions to have, but struggling to get time in diaries for a few of those, but they will come. And I think it's just natural that when I'm working a little bit less or when I've got to make sure that all the operational work is done in the business, something has to give somewhere. And what that thing has been lately has been the podcast. But it's great to be back. And I thought it would be cool to just share a little bit about the stuff that I've changed my mind on. Because I get a lot of things wrong. And rather than pretending that I have the answer to every single question about every single subject, I would much rather share how my thoughts have evolved over time. And reflecting on what I wanted to talk about this week, I thought it'd be cool to just pick up on a few things that I've changed my mind on recently. The first of which is that range of motion in your training might be less important than I had previously said. If you have listened to the Training for Gains podcast, I talk there about the way that we train within the Mind and Matter method. I talk about the way that we make sure that we use quality form, that we use the Goldilocks principle and push within a few reps of failure, and we make sure that we maximize range of motion as much as possible so that you can get a stretch in the target muscles, because all of that is going to improve your chance of building strength, building muscle, and being fucking awesome, really. But what I've recently realized is that my obsession with range of motion in particular may have been counterproductive for me, and therefore may also be counterproductive for you. If you look around the gym, you will likely see guys doing one of two things. Most guys are just going through the motions. Every set looks like a warm-up. Every set looks about 20 reps short of failure. Those guys are never going to get the results that they want because they're not driving adaptation by training close enough to failure. Those reps within 5 reps of failure are the money reps. They're the ones that are going to drive adaptation. Or the other thing that you might see, and that I see, is guys that are just heaving the weight around way too heavy, using loads of body English and momentum to move the weight without really thinking about the target muscles that they're trying to work, and more just heaving the weight from A to B. There is a better way, and that is the way that we train within the Mind and Matter method. We train with excellence, and that means quality form without trying to be a robot. You can use a bit of momentum in the last couple of reps when it gets difficult, but we try and maintain quality form throughout. The Goldilocks principle, training within 3 reps of failure, is where most of our training should be done. As I have said previously, using a full range of motion. So if you think the pec deck, where your arms are furthest away from your body, you're getting the biggest stretch in your pecs. Or if you think the bottom position of a pull-up, that's when your lats are at their longest. That's what I mean by full range of motion. But what I have realized is that latter point may actually have caused me more harm than good over the last couple of years. This came about because I've been experiencing a little bit more joint pain than I have been. I've been training really productively most of this year once I healed my injuries in the first part of the year. But having a couple of flare-ups lately in my shoulders and elbows in particular. And on reflection, I've realized that it may have been my obsession with those last few inches of each rep at either end that may actually have been contributing to that. If we zoom out a little bit, the number one reason you are going to succeed with your training goals and your physique goals is consistency. And a huge part of that is staying healthy and staying injury-free. The guy who stays consistent, stays injury-free, and uses those training principles that I've talked about will win compared to the guy who optimizes everything, makes great progress for a couple of months, but then gets injured, restarts, does it again, gets injured, because you're constantly spinning your wheels. So with joint health being a necessity and a priority for us, especially now we're in our middle years, we have to make the most of our training. We want to push ourselves, but it's really important that we also stay healthy and injury-free so that we can play with our kids, so that we can stay mobile, athletic, strong, and resilient. Is that full range of motion really worth it? And what I have realized, for me at least, is that no, it's not. I think what this comes down to is a balance between what is truly optimal and your health and staying in the game. And for me, and for you, joint health will take priority over maximal hypertrophy. Because I want to be strong, athletic, lean, resilient, and capable. I want to trust my body. I don't want to be fearful about my shoulders, my lower back, my elbows. And in order to do that, I need to sacrifice a little bit of optimality. So I have been adapting my training by limiting the range of motion a little bit more than I may have encouraged you to do previously. So the way I'm doing that is just being mindful of not locking out at either end of the movement. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Bench press. Usually I would bring the dumbbells or the barbell as close to my chest as possible. And with dumbbells, you can actually pull your arms lower so that your pecs are in the most stretched position. And then all the way up, locking out the arms, locking out the elbows at the top. I've adapted that a little bit so that I'm not coming all the way down and I'm not locking out at the top. And it's not a huge difference in the movement. If you saw me doing it, you may not even notice. It's quite subtle because I'm only talking about 2 or 3 inches at the top and the bottom. But what that's doing is allowing me to make sure that my joints are not taking the load. My shoulders, with a history of shoulder pain, it just makes sense for me to do this. And my elbows at the top, where you're locking out, you're really potentially taking the load off the target muscles, the pecs, the triceps, the front delts in a bench press, and onto the joints. Another example, pull-ups. Instead of letting myself dead hang at the bottom of the pull-up, I'm making sure my scapula are engaged and I'm just making sure that I don't hang all the way down, but that I've got a slight bend in my elbows. If you're watching the video, you can see the difference there. What that means is I'll be able to do less reps because it's harder without having a full rest at the bottom, and it's difficult to rest when you're still on, and your muscles are still on. But what that does mean is it's giving me the highest confidence and likelihood that my elbows are not taking on the load. Now, I've only just started doing this, and I've also recently started working once again with my former rehab coach who helped me so much when I had shoulder and elbow problems in the past. So I'm very excited about taking the decision fatigue off my plate. I've got 75 guys to think about their training, their nutrition. I don't necessarily want to have to think about my own as well. So it was such a relief to outsource that to him. It's too early to tell if this is part of the answer, but it feels intuitively like this has been one of the reasons why I get more joint pain than other people, because my obsession with the stretch or my obsession with making sure that I get those last few inches to really maximize hypertrophy may have been counterproductive. Now, what I'm not telling you to do is cut your range short in every single movement. It might be that you can do a lot of these movements just fine without any pain or without any injury. But what I would recommend that you do, if you struggle with shoulder pain or knee pain or back pain or elbow problems or hip problems, then think about the movements in your programming that load that area of your body and experiment with what it feels like to just limit the range of motion a little bit. For example, if you get inner elbow pain, try with bicep movements, not coming all the way down to the bottom where your arms are locked out. Imagine a seated incline dumbbell curl, one of my top 3 bicep movements. Instead of letting your arms hang down all the way, just go until they're nearly straight, but not all the way straight, and then come up to the top. See if that helps with the elbow pain. Or shoulder pain, limiting the range of motion a little bit in the bench press. whether it's a chest press or a dumbbell bench press or a barbell bench press or any variation, might be just what you need to reduce the risk of you aggravating that area of your body that might be more prone to injury. And if your joints feel better when you've tried that for a few weeks, congratulations, you've leveled up your training. This is a big piece of my 2026 project, which I'm calling Project Unfuckery, to get back to full health. I realized this week as I turned 43 that I haven't really had good health this year. I started the year riddled with injuries, particularly like really, really painful back and some shoulder issues. Frozen shoulder that randomly came on out of nowhere in Sardinia, August 2024. I started TRT in February. And also alongside that, I was rehabbing and most of the problems went away now. The back pain has been a low level issue for years, on and off. Never had sustained periods for longer than a month or so where it's not been an issue. But the other problems were fine, fixed them, started training properly again. With the TRT, my recovery was better, my progress was better, and I was pushing on. Then, as I talked about in the last TRT podcast I did, I've spent the last 6 months dealing with the mental anguish of TRT acne, which I'm delighted to say is now well on the mend and should be sorted, resolved by the end of the year, which is amazing. So happy about that. But in reducing my dose down from 140 milligrams a week at the start to what is now 60 milligrams a week currently, some of the joint pains flared up again. And it's such a huge part of my identity to be strong, fit, capable, athletic, healthy, to be a leader for my family, for my clients, for the community, for my peers. So not having my physical health has really fucked with my mental health this year. Now, I'm not saying that for sympathy. I'm saying it to illustrate the point that success is about staying in the game. And the way to stay in the game is to stay healthy. So if you struggle with joint pain, have a think about your range of motion and know that maybe limiting the range of motion a little bit might be exactly what you need to take some of the impact off your joints, keep it on the target muscles, and allow you to continue pushing your training hard while staying healthy and injury-free. The second thing I have been wrong about in the last year or so is the idea that slowing down is lazy. And this is particularly true for driven guys who see themselves as high performers across various domains in their life, or type A personalities who struggle to slow down and feel like they need to be hitting full send every single week. And in the first 3 years of running the business, I felt guilty about taking time off. I thought that my clients would judge me for not being available for them every day, every week. I felt like I was nowhere near achieving everything I wanted to in the business. I didn't have financial security. I was still working to match my previous income, which would have allowed me to live with a bit less stress and a bit more certainty and security. And until I'd achieved that, I didn't feel like I deserved time off. And I had this constant worry that, what if something goes wrong? What if all my clients end up struggling in those few days or that week that I'm not available? But more recently, I've had huge realization that it's much easier for me to tell other people than it is to act on myself. And it is that slowing down is not lazy. Slowing down is the opposite of lazy. Slowing down, the rest and the recovery is part of the work. There is no way anybody can perform at their best if they are always on. The reason for that is because energy is a finite and renewable resource. Hopefully you protect your time. Hopefully you don't just let other people railroad your calendar and your schedule, put meetings into your work calendar whenever they want. And hopefully you don't let other people's demands mean that you never have time for yourself. And if you do protect your time, which you should be doing, you need to value and protect your energy in the same way. It's finite. And the more you push, the more you need to think about how you are going to renew that energy that you are expending in pushing towards achieving your goals. Whether those goals are health, fitness, physique, getting a new job, changing career, starting a business, or any other big, ambitious goal that you might have. There was this weird culture within the NHS where I used to work where people would kind of humble brag about how busy they were. They would complain about having worked till 11 p.m. at night, or having spent all day in meetings, or working weekends. And it was meant as a bit of a flex. It was meant as like, oh, I'm so important because look how busy I am. I can't possibly slow down. But I never felt admiration for the people who said that kind of thing. I always just felt pity. I always felt like, you're probably not very good at managing your time or saying no. You're probably not looking after yourself. Therefore, you're probably not doing a great job of everything you need to in your life. If you avoid rest and recovery and true time off, you'll be performing on low battery mode more often than necessary. And it's that realization that has led to me now unapologetically taking more time off and doing it with pride, because I know that if I'm going to serve my clients with the focus, the drive, and the enthusiasm that they need from me, and to give them the extra 20% that they might need when they're struggling so that they can be successful, I have to protect my own energy. And if I want to put complete focus into building cool shit for my clients, like the anti-diet method toolkit that I've been working on, or recording podcasts and sharing cool ideas that will help you, I need to protect my own energy. And slowing down is the only way that I'm able to do that. I took a week off for Lucy's birthday into my birthday 2 weeks ago. And I didn't over-explain to my clients why I was doing that. I said, I'm off next week. And the reason for that is because I need time off like everyone else. I used to work with another coach called Clarissa Lepeltier. She's a life coach now based in Australia. And she once said to me, there is a reason that the statutory amount of annual leave that somebody gets in this country is more than 20 days. So why would you, as a business owner, feel like you should not have less than 20 whatever days it is annual leave per year? Which is a great point. And I think it's understandable. In the first year or the first 18 months of me growing the business, I was navigating having a job, working another job, and growing the business. And I wanted to get things up and running so that I could get to where I am now. And that meant sacrifices. And it did mean not taking much time off. And I worked weekends and I worked evenings through that time. But I've earned the right to take time off now. And now I don't see it as something to be guilty about. I see it as an integral part of the plan. And I see it as actually the way that I can protect my energy so that I can make Mind and Matter Fitness and the program and the client experience as fucking awesome as it can possibly be. And for you, what it means is strategically planned deloads from your training, easy weeks, which again, I've not done enough of, by the way, which is another reason why my joint health may have deteriorated lately, and another thing that I'm learning and need to do more of. Or if you've got a long extended fat loss phase, taking a break from the caloric deficit for 1 or 2 weeks strategically so that you give yourself a mental and physical break from the hard work. And yes, complete time off from work without secretly checking emails or responding to Slack or Teams messages. I'm looking at you, entrepreneurs. I know your game because I have played that game. And even when I did take time off a couple of weeks ago, there were still some non-negotiable things that I made sure were done. So guys who just started in the program, I made sure that I still responded to them, still saw their check-ins. My mastery clients, I still sent them their video reviews. Things that just make sure that everybody feels safe and supported. And I did say to anyone, if there is anything urgent, just send me a message with the word urgent in. No one did that because realistically, I guess from their perspective, what would be so urgent that it couldn't wait a couple of days? All the ideas that I had in my head that my clients will judge me for taking time off, I just created. And if I'm working with a coach and they tell me they're off next week, I completely respect that decision. I know that everybody needs time off from work, so why would it would be different for me? No idea. Now, to take it a step further, what I have learned this year because I'm much more in tune with my energy, my thought processes, my emotional state than I have been at any point in my life. And what I've learned this year is that I need these slowdown and recovery weeks way more than I might have expected. If I look at my weekly reviews, my quarterly reviews, what I see is that I can do 6 to 8 weeks of like full throttle, going after it, strategic work, big projects, building new stuff, making the whole process, the whole experience better. But after that, I need a big slowdown week. And when I don't do that and I try and push into a third month, bad things happen. I find myself way more distracted. I find my energy dips, my focus dips, my motivation dips, and I just feel like, oh, fuck, I could do with some time off. So I'd much rather do it proactively. So what I've done as of September, when the kids went back to school, I've blocked out every single half term from now through until summer next year as a complete week off. That was the week that I took a couple of weeks ago. And in fact, my kids weren't even here. My kids weren't in the country. They were in Greece with their mum. But I'd booked the week off before I knew they were going on holiday. And I kept to it and maintained it because the easy thing for me to do would have been, well, I can just work. But if I just worked then, okay, that week would have been okay. But my energy now going into November, December, when I want to do more cool stuff, would have been much lower. And the client experience would have suffered as a result of that. So I am now strategically implementing more frequent slowdowns in my work. And maybe the smart play is to align those to slow down weeks in my training as well. I've literally just thought of that idea, but it makes so much sense because then I don't have to think, when's my slowdown week in my training? I just align it to the slowdown week in my work. Amazing. And if I haven't convinced you, think of it this way. Would you rather hit a wall, find your motivation and focus completely wiped, then need 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get back on track? Or would you rather strategically plan an easy week every 8 weeks, every 12 weeks in advance so that you never hit the wall at all? Learn from my mistakes. Do the second one, not the first one. Now, the other thing I would say is that you need to earn slowing down. You need to work hard towards your goals. You need to be focused, disciplined. You need to take it seriously. But having done that, you need to also take the easy weeks just as seriously. And that means resting, recovering, switching off. It should feel ridiculously easy, like a deload week in the gym where you're using 50% of the weight for 50% of the volume. So instead of doing 60 kilograms times 10, you would do 30 kilograms times 5. That is going to feel so ridiculously easy that you'd be like, is there any point to doing this? Yes, there is a point to doing it because it's exactly that easy restorative training that is going to allow you to push hard and progress after your slowdown. Staying always on is nothing to be proud of. Slowing down is part of the work. And once you've basked in the sustained energy and focus and motivation that you get from doing this, you will not go back. Third thing I've been wrong about. I'm not an island. You're not an island. And as midlife guys, we all need a sense of connection and community with other guys who have the same sorts of goals and motivations and struggles that we have. After COVID, I was absolutely 100% all in on remote working. Before COVID, I had done a grueling and very expensive commute from Durham to Leeds 3 days a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It was 3 hours a day, each day, 1.5 hours there, 1.5 hours back. I was setting off at 7ish and getting back home at 6ish. Going to a very, very busy, stressful job in a very chaotic office environment. And after that, the idea of never having to do that again was so desirable and so appealing. And kind of taboo to say this, but I am a little bit of an introvert. That surprises some people, but I am naturally. And I actually enjoyed the lockdowns in a weird way because of the lack of societal pressure to actually do stuff. But I was wrong about this because I realized I took it too far in the other direction. In my example, you can have too much of anything, and it's very comfortable and easy for me to stay in the house and just work and see my family and have fun with them. But actually, I need to get out of the house more and connect with people. I talked about this a little bit in a few of my Substack articles about the idea of disrupting the status quo, getting out of the house, working in coffee shops. I've done a couple of meetups with other coaches. I'm going to London next week for a coaching summit with my previous business mentors. And honestly, I'm not going to that necessarily for the learning and the educational aspect. I'm going to it for the vibes. There are a few people going who I've never met in person, but I know very well online and I've been friendly with for the last few years, who I'm really looking forward to meeting finally. There are some people going who I am friends with, who I haven't seen for a while, and it's important for me to get out of the house and push myself to do stuff like that so that I have that connection. So I've definitely swung back towards the middle when it comes to my attitudes to remote working versus working in public spaces. But I've also come to realize that online spaces are just as valuable and indeed have helped fill some of the gap that might be missing in my life when it comes to connection with other midlife guys. And I also know that that is true for other men. Because my clients consistently tell me that the Mind and Matter Fitness community is one of the most powerful and valuable aspects of working with me, because pursuing any hard goal can be lonely. Your partner and your kids likely do not give a shit that you hit a bench press PR this week, or that your waist is an inch slimmer, or that you lifted 3,000 penguins as shown to you by the Mind and Matter Fitness app. But having somewhere to share those victories with other guys is really powerful. But it's not only about the wins. I think the reason the guys in the Mind and Matter method value the community so much is because I have been intentional in creating a space that embodies the values of masculinity that I want to live by, that I want to teach my kids, and that I want to see more of in the world. And that is being strong and fit and capable, and being a provider and being a leader. Very traditional ideas of masculinity there, but also the non-traditional ideas of masculinity. Being emotionally available, being vulnerable, and being courageous in admitting when you are struggling. Midlife guys are the demographic most at risk of suicide. And I think one of the reasons for that is a sense that for many men in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, there is a sense that when they are struggling, they have nowhere to turn, no one to talk to, they struggle to express themselves, they struggle to admit when they need help, and therefore they feel hopeless. And therefore, for a lot of men, the only way out, as they see it, is suicide. But what I now know is that men need community just as much as women. But the difference is it does not come as naturally to men as it does to women. And therefore, maybe that is why online spaces can be such a valuable space, particularly for men, because it's more anonymous. It's probably easier for men to express their emotions or their struggles in a WhatsApp group than it might be for them to do it with their mates in person. Whereas women, I think, are naturally just a bit more emotionally open and more able to express themselves in that way in person, face to face. Obviously, I'm stereotyping here, and this is not absolutely true for 100% of men, 100% of women, but I do think that it is typical traits of masculinity and femininity. And I mean, it's hard enough for me to arrange to meet a couple of mates who live locally, to arrange a time that works for us all, to watch the football and have a couple of beers. In fact, the last time we did it was last Christmas, so it was nearly a year ago. We're approaching our annual meetup. They live locally. Like, I see them 2 or 3 times a year max. Their kids go to the same school as mine. It should not be this difficult. But the reason it's difficult is because we are all busy with family, with work, with other stuff. And therefore, it's really difficult to actually arrange anything. It was an absolute miracle that we managed to arrange with another group of mates, my oldest group of friends from school, to coordinate a time where we all went on holiday to Rotterdam in the summer. And if we manage to do that again next year to Porto or Berlin, which is the plan, that'll be an amazing achievement, because just trying to get people together is really difficult. And without that, it's important that you, me, and every midlife guy has somewhere to turn. And I think that is why the community has grown into such a powerful, valuable support network for the guys within it. And this has really come through in the last couple of months. I remember John saying something in the community a month or so ago about how impressive it was that the guys in there felt able to open up, and how that made him feel like he was in a safe, secure space where he could also be open and vulnerable, and about how important that was for him. And other guys were echoing that same sentiment. And just recently, it's been quite challenging, to be honest, because there are guys in the group who are dealing with loss and grief and devastating events in their lives. Me personally, I've experienced way too much death and suicide amongst friends and colleagues for a guy of just 43. It's utterly devastating. And in fact, I found out last week that a friend of a friend, who is someone I've also been friends with, and we've had some great times at Deckmantle Festival in Amsterdam and at nights out in Manchester and in London, that he had committed suicide. And it just really shook me. It was devastating. And I know there's other guys dealing with similar. And it just shouldn't be this way. And that's why men need community just as much as women. That's why men need connection. They need somewhere to turn. They need to know that there is help out there. They have support. They are not alone. They don't have to struggle. And one of the ways, just a small little way that I can contribute positively to the world, is by trying to embody those strong masculine values of emotional availability and vulnerability, and knowing that it's okay to open up and admit when you're struggling and admit when you're failing. And like I'm doing in this podcast, admitting when you're wrong. I know the things that I'm talking about here are trivial compared to suicide or helplessness or depression, but what I'm doing is showing you that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to not know the answers. It's okay to be struggling. I didn't have a grand plan of creating a space where midlife men would feel able to open up about their mental health. Like when I started Mind and Matter Fitness, yes, there was a mindset and a mental aspect to it, but it was mainly meant to be a community for guys to talk about training and nutrition. But that's how it's evolved. And whilst it may not have been like the big grand plan, it's definitely because those things are so important to me and they are things that I'm passionate about. And I am absolutely set on continuing to foster an environment where guys feel secure enough to open up about their problems. So if you have been struggling or you are struggling, know this: you are not an island and you don't have to suffer alone. There are charities out there that run face-to-face events. Andy's Man Club adverts are up in my gym, Pure Gym in Durham. They meet every Monday, I think, apart from bank holidays. There are groups all over the country. It's an organisation doing great work, so men can come together and talk about mental health problems and just things they are struggling with. But if you don't want to do it in person, which I think is true for a lot of men, that's okay too. That's where the power of online community comes into its own. So the third thing I was wrong about is that I used to think it was cool to be a lone wolf. I train alone, I work alone, I do everything alone. I'll just stay at home and see the few people that mean the most to me in my life. But what I've now realized is that I need connection, you need connection, and we all do. So it's really important that you find your tribe. I'm going to leave it there for this week. I hope this has been helpful as always. Any topics that you want me to cover in future, any questions you have, any thoughts you have, please just let me know. Usual channels, the links are in the show notes. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.